It is Kieran Trippier. It is delicious! Glorious! Glorious!
Walker in there too. Luke Shaw! Harry Kane wants it played into him. He chooses Grealish instead. It's Grealish! It's Kane! I think like this has happened for a long time. Here's the overhead kick from Kane! Palmer finds Watkins. Watkins turns! Watkins scores!
Hello and welcome to the Gate 102 podcast. I hope I find you well. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Always is appreciated. A thank you to all who listened to my previous episode, which was me talking about England's 2-1 win over Belgium in the Nations League. A really convincing win for England against what was the world's best team at the time. A reminder, if you've not yet listened to that episode, please do check that one out. You can find it at your podcast player of choice, along with all the other episodes I've done so far. So today's game, I'll be continuing with the 2020 Nations League campaign as England face Denmark at Wembley. Now, it'd been a great start to the Nations League for Southgate's team. Played 3 games, won 2, drawn 1, and we're top of the group. So it was a really encouraging start. And they would have been hoping to build on that. But this was always going to be a tough game. They were playing Denmark, and Denmark had held England to a goalless draw last time around in their reverse fixture. And they'd only lost 2 games in the last 40 international matches prior to this game. So they were a hard team to beat. But I'll start with the England team. So Jordan Pickford in goal, of course. A back three of Kyle Walker, Harry Maguire and Connor Cody. Now, Cody replaced Eric Dyer from the Belgian win in the previous game, so only one change to that back three. Right wing back was Reece James, and this was actually his first start in an England shirt after coming off the bench in the previous 2 games. On the opposite side, left wing back was Arsenal youngster Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and this was also his first start, so both wing backs were making their first full debuts, if you like, so a big night for both of them. Now, obviously, Maitland-Niles wasn't a natural left wing back, but he could do a job there. But I think it highlighted what a lack of depth we had in that position at the time. The midfield consisted of Declan Rice, who was playing sort of at the base of midfield. Calvin Phillips also started once again. And finally, Mason Mount playing in that sort of number 10 role. So a very balanced midfield. Then just to finish off, it was a front 2, a very prolific front 2, with Harry Kane alongside Marcus Rashford. Now, my problem with this team is that, apart from Pickford, who's obviously goalkeeper, all the outfield players are right-footed. And my only concern with this is that it just lacked balance. And I mentioned how England had a lack of left-footed options, especially in defence, so I suppose there is a reason for that. And sometimes it can work. If you think about the 2018 World Cup, how successful we were, and we had Ashley Young at left wing back, and so I suppose it can work at times, but a lot of the time it doesn't work. And I think this is something that maybe cost us this game, not having that left footer at left back or at left wing. So yeah, that's just something I thought I'd mention. So moving on to the events of the game, and if I'm honest, it was a poor start from England's point of view. We couldn't really penetrate up the pitch. There was not much creativity going on. We had creative attacking players on there. People like Mount, Rashford, Kane, but we just didn't get the ball to them enough. And when they did get the ball, they just weren't doing enough with the ball. And to be fair, Denmark were really good as well. They were a really good defensive team. Prior to this game, they kept 9 clean sheets in 11. So they knew how to be solid defensively. So you got to give credit to the opposition because they were making it difficult for us. But I think the big talking point came around the half-hour mark of the game, and that's because England went down to 10 men. Harry Maguire was sent off, receiving a second yellow card from the referee. 2 really reckless fouls, ones that he didn't have to make. a very clumsy error for a player who was usually so consistent for England. And Maguire had got a yellow card 5 minutes into the game, so he was already cautious and aware that another bad foul meant he was sent off. And yeah, just around half an hour into the game, took a heavy touch, and that meant he lost possession. And in doing so, he took the Belgian player out. And yeah, a disastrous night for Maguire. And just to add context to this whole situation, a few weeks before this game, it was announced that he'd been arrested in Greece for getting involved in a fight to try and protect his sister. I don't know if any of you remember that news coming out a few years ago, but this game was only around a month later after that incident occurred, so I suppose it was still fresh in Maguire's mind. And also, he hadn't had the best start to the season with United, and that probably coincided with the incident that happened over the summer, and now had been sent off for England, so it wasn't the best time for Maguire at this point in time. But if anything, I felt a bit sorry for him because he had a lot going on, and this red card made things worse. But you could tell he just wasn't right physically or mentally. But in the end, it meant England were down to 10 men, and when teams down to 10 men, it's inevitable that it needs to make changes. So Southgate decided to put Kyle Walker at left back and went to a solid back four. And he brought on Tyrone Mings at centre back, and he replaced Maitland-Niles. So I felt a bit sorry for Maitland-Niles, as his first full start was cut short because of a forced substitution, really. No fault of his own, but I suppose it made sense to bring Mings on, who was a centre back, a light-for-light replacement almost, and it just meant Maitland-Niles had to give way, and obviously Kyle Walker moved to left back. And let's be honest, Walker's not a left back, but it was one of those things where who else do you play there with the players we had? It was almost as if he was the only one you could play there. But I mean, Walker, he'd only been playing left back 2 minutes, and he gave away a penalty. And I did just think maybe that's because he's inexperienced playing there. But yeah, Walker conceded a penalty, and to be honest, it was maybe a bit soft. Pickford came out his goal, then sort of hesitated, and that created some confusion. And ultimately, Walker brought down the Denmark player, and it was maybe a bit soft, but either way, it was poor defending from England's point of view, regardless of how soft it was. So it went from bad to worse, really, for England. Not only were they down to 10 men, but Denmark now had an opportunity to open scoring from 12 yards out, and it was Christian Eriksen to take. And yeah, he made no mistake, sent Pickford the wrong way. A very calm and composed penalty, and Denmark were in the lead. And that was actually Eriksen's 24th goal in 35 games for his national side. So that was an incredible achievement. It showed just how important he was for Denmark. And he'd opened scoring at Wembley on this occasion. And I was watching the highlights of this back, and I know I touched on this in the COVID episode, but they had a crowd noise on for when Eriksen scored, and it's just awful, isn't it? I don't know who came up with that idea, but just watching the highlights back from obviously 5 years later, it still sounds awful, the fake crowd noise they had during COVID. But yeah, a reminder, my COVID episode is still available if you want to listen to it. But anyway, back to this game. Yeah, Eriksen scored, and yeah, it meant Denmark were in the lead going into half time. And it was a bit of a nightmare of the first half for England, probably one of the worst 45 minutes we had under Southgate. And I was a little concerned for the second half because we were down to 10 men, and it felt like there wasn't a lot we could do to get back in the game. Also, Denmark were playing 4-2-3-1 with really wide wingers. So, and they often say, don't they, if you're playing against a side with 10 men, use the width of the pitch, stretch the defence out. And that's what Denmark did. And it was proving tricky for England. But moving on to the second half then, and to be fair, I thought England really dug in and put in a shift. And It still wasn't a good performance, but the players worked really hard, and you could tell they were trying to get that equaliser. And I've got to give credit to England second half because they almost scored. Mason Mount had a header midway through the second half, and it was a really good header. Lots of power on the header, but Kasper Schmeichel with an incredible save to deny the Chelsea midfielder from scoring. An unbelievable save, and that was frustrating, as it would have been a great goal. I was thinking after Mount missed that chance, is that it? Will we get another chance? Is there still an opportunity to score? And turns out there was. In stoppage time of the game, Connor Cody had a header from a Harry Kane cross. The ball was whipped in at pace, but Connor Cody's header was well blocked by the Danish defender. It was a real shame because the header was going in, and it was a brilliant clearance to stop Cody from scoring. And this was gutting, as you could say England deserved something from the game just because of the amount of effort they put in, especially in the second half. But it's funny because in the away fixture against Denmark, during this same sort of campaign, Harry Kane had a shot sort of the last minute that was cleared off the line. And I suppose same happened in this game with Cody, although maybe not cleared off the line, but it wasn't far off. Just a shame that England didn't get anything from this game. But it was so close because as soon as Kane crossed that ball into Cody, he thought he's going to score here, and it was going in, and then the defender just right place, right time. The referee blew his whistle, and it meant Denmark had got all the points in the bag, and England fell to their first defeat in their Nations League campaign. But even though the referee blew his whistle, the game was not over. As seconds after he blew for full time, he showed another red card to another England player. Yes, this time it was Reece James, who got himself a straight red card. And this is due to dissent, as he said something to the referee after confronting him at the end of the game. I don't know what was said, but it was enough for him to be straight sent off, and it meant England had 2 red cards in a game. And I think that was the first. I'm not sure. I should have double checked, but I think that's the first time we had 2 red cards in a game. Someone might have to let me know, but I should have properly researched it. But it was a disappointing moment for James because he was probably England's best player on the night as well. And one of the only few positives you could take from this game was his performance at right back. Just a shame that a bit of ill discipline at the end meant it sort of ruined the occasion. Obviously, it's his first start as well, and sadly for James, what should have been remembered as a fine performance will now always be remembered for the wrong reasons. But despite losing 1-0 and having 2 players sent off, Southgate was reasonably pleased. If anything, he was quite proud of his team, how they were resilient and kept going. And he's right because, although we had those 2 early setbacks, England, they dug deep and almost got an equaliser. But something Southgate also said was how he thought it wasn't a penalty. And if anything, it was a foul on Walker instead. So clearly, the England manager not agreeing with the penalty decision. But as always, Southgate would have learned a lot from this game, as he did with every Nations League game. Players were given opportunities. He saw what players were like out of position. He witnessed how we play with 10 men, if it was to happen again. So it was a strange game, but not the end of the world, because Gareth would have learnt a lot, and also it's not as important as qualification results or other tournament games. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, because I sometimes worry about these games, especially games we lose and don't score, because they're never the most exciting, and they're not games that people particularly want to remember. So I sometimes find it hard to talk about, but hopefully I've covered a lot there. And I must admit, I totally forgot about the Reece James red card. I remember the Maguire one, but I totally forgot about the James one. But yeah, for a 1-0 defeat, I think there was actually quite a lot to talk about. But I hope you've enjoyed it. My next game, and England were once again at Wembley, and this time in a friendly against the Republic of Ireland. So I look forward to discussing that one with you next week. So thank you for listening to this episode. Always appreciated. Hope you all have a good weekend, whenever you listen to this. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll look forward to speaking to you soon.